Welcome to the podcast. Most people don't, but you do. We have stories and conversations about people that are doing things extra, people that are plussing things, people that are going above and beyond. Imagine you have a great idea and you never do anything about it. Sadly, that's what most people don't do. Today's guest, however, is a person that does. He is making his dreams come true. He's also helping others. His name is Jean-François Lappas. He's based in the UK. I will read a little bit about his bio, and then we're going to get right into some questions about the company that he has founded and how they are helping people. So we're going to call him either JF or Jean-François, depending on how my pronunciation is. He left a six-figure corporate job amid a pandemic and burnout to find his true purpose. He went through a journey of self-discovery, fueled by self-help books, self-awareness, self-compassion, and he's now living in harmony with his core values. Outstanding. And he's created a coaching business that helps not only identify his mission, but it is helping people from all walks of life. And we will talk about his platform, Wabya, pronounced Wabya, which is an acronym which we will get to. Jean-François, I know it is a different time zone over in the UK, but thank you for joining the podcast.
Hi, Bart. Pleasure to be here. Pleasure to be tuned in with everyone.
Yeah, and this will go out to, we're very fortunate. We were recently recognized top 2% podcast in the world, and it's because of interesting guests like you and the support of our listeners that want to be able to learn and hear from real life examples of people that have done and are still doing. Can you tell us about growing up and some of your early influencers? I know before we officially hit record, you said that you grew up in Canada, but can you just walk our listeners through what that was like, good childhood, any people that influence you today to what you are doing now?
Yeah, absolutely. And there are so many that I could think of, but I think three specifically come to mind. So I grew up in the suburbs of Montreal, in the South Shore of Montreal. I had a really beautiful and wonderful childhood. And obviously, the first two influencers were Patrick, my dad, and Pauline, my mom. Pauline's actually my stepmom. So my mom passed away when I was very young, a young baby, actually. I was 19 days old. And 3 months into my life, she stepped in and developed a relationship with my father and just started taking care of me. So she's mom for all intents and purposes. And they are both very different people, but really gave me a very kind of holistic template that I could work with. So Patrick being very people focused, very accommodating of others, and Pauline being very driven and self-focused. So obviously two massive influences. And one that came to mind as well, which I hadn't thought about in a while, but occasionally I think about her. And I've never been able to find her again. This was my sixth grade English teacher. Her name is Christina Lopez. And I remember when I graduated sixth grade many moons ago, we got a laminated picture of all our classmates. And then at the back of it, she wrote, "May you always be on top." And she signed her name. And to this day, this is a phrase, a mantra that I think about very often. And after being 12 years old and graduating sixth grade, I never saw her again, never spoke to her again. So, hey, who knows? Maybe by the miracle of technology and the universe, maybe Christina, if you're listening, hopefully you can get in touch. I'd love to catch up with you.
And even as you say that, Jean-François, it is so important to be able to recognize the people that have had an influence on our life. So, of course, your parents, are both your parents still alive?
They are, yes.
Okay, thank goodness. And they're seeing your success. But I would highly recommend, and someone just taught me this the other day, if you're trying to locate like an email or contact information, and we're not sponsored by this organization, but they said to go to Hunter, Hunter, if you're hunting and gathering, hunter.ai, and it's a great tool to be able to find people. I would suggest maybe you or your wife or whatever, those people that have influenced you, they need to know what they have done and how they have guided you and directed you. And as you share that story, there's a question that I ask when I'm presenting to audiences. I ask, who can remember who won the Super Bowl, right? US football, right? Who won it 14 years ago? No one can remember. Who won American Idol, America's Got Talent? No one can remember. But I said, if you could tell me your favorite elementary school teacher and why, raise your hand. Usually, Jean-François, it's about 99% of the audience, because of how it made people feel. So I love that you had shared that. When you were growing up, did you know what you wanted to do? And I know you left a very powerful job, which we will get into here momentarily, but did you know what you wanted to do when you were growing up?
No, I suppose I didn't really. Yeah, and that's a very short answer to that. I never felt like I had a calling beyond people. I knew I really cared deeply for people, but I never knew. Like my wife's a musical theater actor, right? So for her, since she was 6 years old, it's been clear that's been her vocation, and she's made it her profession, which is fantastic. And I remember meeting her and being so in awe and a little bit envious of this clarity of purpose that she'd always have. And it took me 36 years to find kind of my purpose and to discover or uncover my purpose. So no, I wasn't clear on what I wanted to do. And I don't think a lot of people are, to be honest with Bart.
No, no, you're absolutely right. And when they do find their purpose, it's interesting that most people are afraid to start doing it because
Mm,
maybe they don't have a plan. I just got off of another podcast interview, and this gentleman was talking about he knew what he wanted to do and he started to develop a plan. So it wasn't a rush into anything. It was he had a plan and he knew when he could jump off the mothership of whoever he was working for and start his own thing. But that can be scary, which is going to relate, of course, to not scariness for your story, which we will get to because I want to hear about the transition. Did you go to university
I
to
did. Yeah,
study?
I went to McGill University in Montreal.
Okay, and what did you study?
International business, quite a broad diploma from a business standpoint. I originally wanted to go into communication because I think that's something that I'm quite good at, and it's something that Pauline promoted. However, she also said, but actually, instead of just having a pure communication degree, just get something that's maybe a little bit more meaty, where you have a little bit more gravitas when you speak about things, what you're talking about. And so I did my international business degree, which was great because I actually finished my third year of university, my last year of university in Torino in Italy in 2004 and 2005.
Okay. Communications, working with people, you had the sense of empathy from your parents. Do you remember, and again, you don't necessarily need to name the company, but what was your first job then upon graduation from university?
Actually, I worked at HMV selling DVDs for 9 months back when HMV was pretty big and also DVDs were pretty big for those that remember them.
I don't even know what HMV is.
I'm trying to find the equivalent from a US standpoint, but it was a massive provider of like basically music, right? Records, compact discs, DVDs at the time and everything. And that was like downtown, like prime real estate Montreal, at the corner of the two biggest streets in the city, like the flagship store. And now it's no longer there. And it's actually, I think it still exists, but it's like very small now. So I did that for 9 months after graduating.
Okay. And then looking at some of your other experience, corporate affairs manager with a tobacco company,
Yeah.
and then internal digital communications based out of the UK, and then goes on doing more and more with communications in media campaigns, internal
Mm,
communications,
mm,
corporate and get like just tremendous things. And I don't want to assume that what company it was that burned you out.
uh,
We don't need to talk about that unless you want to. But can you talk about then how you were feeling in the corporate world and
mm.
when did you start getting tired? Do you remember?
Yeah, look, I left HMV for a proper quote unquote corporate job, and that's where I spent 14 years, which is the entire resume that you've just outlined. That's
Mm,
14 years in the same corporation, global tobacco company. And that was like my entire career. And it was strange because I remember at certain points going, is this what I'm going to be doing for the next 30, 40 years? And it's the only model I'd really gotten like from my parents, right? The people around me, that's what I knew. But I remember, I think it was 2019 when I took a senior internal communications role globally. So I was responsible for internal communications for the entire group. That's
mhm.
50,000 employees globally. The job was a big one, but I was equipped to handle it. But I think there was a change in the leadership and everything at the time as well. And that's where I started feeling this kind of friction. But I didn't really know what it was. I was just plugging away 12 hours a day, long weeks and whatnot I was making six figures by that point and I had all the perks and the benefits. But from that point forward, and then obviously tipping into the pandemic into 2020, it started being decreasing returns, even though from an external standpoint, I seem to have it made by many standards, right?
Sure. Yeah. Yeah. Were you passionate about communications? Were you passionate, and are you passionate about tobacco?
Mm,
And I like asking this question because there might be someone that is representing a product that they don't use,
mm,
but they have to be passionate about selling it, as an example. Can you
mm.
share? Were you passionate about communications, and are you or were you passionate about tobacco, the product?
No, it wasn't a question of passion. I think I got the job because I knew I needed to quote unquote get my shit together and get a proper paying job and get salaried and everything. And it just happened that this was a company that was hiring and I had a link to a hiring manager. So I went through all the interviews, 3 rounds of interviews, and then I started working there. I was a smoker at the time. It's not a prerequisite. It never has been a prerequisite. I
Mhm.
wasn't passionate about tobacco. All I wanted to do was, I guess I was passionate about trying to have a career. That's really what was driving me. So it wasn't a passion for communication or tobacco.
Mhm.
And then eventually, because I spent the first few years in marketing, basically, in 4 or 5 years in marketing and sales. And then I moved into communication from there. I think I've always been a communicator. So that's something that's always been part of me. Even when I was a lifeguard before I graduated from university,
Mhm.
one of the things that I was quite a vocal spokesperson for the lifeguard team, enough that I actually unionized the lifeguard group in my town because we weren't getting paid anywhere near what we should have been getting paid for what we were doing. So that's always been part of me. And really my passion, if we were to talk about that, is people, and the means by which I express my passion, the ability that I have is to be able to communicate and engage with people. No passion for communication or tobacco specifically. I cracked on because once you're in it, you're now I'm like climbing the greasy pole, and
Of course.
like exiting seemed like much more effort than staying in.
Of
I
course.
stopped smoking when I was working in the business. This wasn't like a massive thing. Not a lot of people actually smoke in the tobacco industry, not more than the average people in society. And yeah, I guess, fell into a trap, which can happen in any industry, anywhere. And I think a lot of people spend their lives trapped in situations and not really knowing how to get out of them. I just got a kick in the pants in 2020, basically.
Yeah. Let's see. There are a lot of people that feel trapped.
Mm,
And it might be easy to say, because I used to be a recruiter in the hospitality world, right? My experience, different types of leadership, but mainly hospitality.
mm,
Now, as a professional speaker and trainer and podcast host, of course, it's very easy for me to say, if there's something that you don't like, do something different. And there's many people that are guests on my show that will say the same thing. Life is too short. If you don't like what you're doing, do something different. That scares a lot of people because they don't necessarily know what that different thing is going to be. Even some friends of ours recently that are retiring, they are bored because they don't know what else they like to do. This story, this message, Jean-François, is a good reminder for people to take a pause and think about, what do they like to do? What do they want to do? And realize that I just spoke to a woman yesterday, a delightful lady, that her job was eliminated. And she was a little bit intimidated. She was going to LinkedIn and other resources and finding jobs that she believes she would be qualified for. But she's intimidated because it shows the job has been up for 2 weeks and there's already 1,200 applicants. My message to her and to any of our listeners, and I'm curious to see how you react to this, is 1,199 of those people aren't, you are remarkable. You are different. You bring something to the table. And when I talk to the companies that are looking for people, I asked the company recently, what's your unicorn? What does that candidate look like? Their response was someone that has a driver's license and shows up. Some of the expectations are not that high because there is a challenge with our current workforce. But there are great people out there. People that are listening have to realize you are very good. You are unique. You are different. You are remarkable. You're not redundant. If you're not happy doing what you're doing, do something else. Or in your case, Jean-François, you created something else. I want to
mhm.
get back to you, and hopefully you didn't mind me inserting that story. Anything to add with that story, that message?
Bart, I think you're preaching the gospel as far as I'm concerned. This notion of the fact most people don't know how unique and incredible they are. And that is
Mhm.
so important for anyone listening or watching to remember. There's literally no one else in 7 billion people on earth that is exactly like you. And that's really what's inspired me to create Wabya, to help people. Maybe this is going to sound like a weird term, but remember who they are
Hmm.
and actually uncover all of that and make that a reality. You mentioned something just now about this notion of doing. Action is quite challenging, or can seem quite challenging. It seems to require a lot of effort. But I think before you get into action, it's about that exploration. What do you actually care for? What are your values and your beliefs? And
Hmm.
that's exactly the journey I went through when I burned out in 2020. I didn't plan my exit. It was basically the perfect shitstorm, right? It was the pandemic, which everybody suffered through.
Sure.
And then there was our entire function moved under someone else who was new. And then his report was new, his report was new, my manager was new, and I was new in the role. So that kind of cascaded. And the fact that I was sat at my kitchen table for hours on end doing something new. But through that and through this burnout, which I had to have a hard exit, handed my notice, 14 years exactly to the day where I started for the business. I really enjoyed that symmetry for some reason. It still tickles me when I think about it. But I spent my entire notice period recovering, doing therapy, and going back to what I was just saying a moment ago, actually going, okay, what's happened? How did I get to that point 14 years into my career where I was doing something that felt so remote from who I am as a person? And then the penny actually dropped, Bart.
Yeah.
I don't know who I am.
Mm.
So I actually used all the skills that I learned from a communication standpoint, thinking about a business is fundamentally a set of core values. That's how it begins. What do we believe in? What do we stand for? There needs to be a purpose. What are we going to keep on doing until we no longer exist? And then the in between bit, right? The vision statement and the mission statement. So I started thinking about myself as Jean-François Inc. If I were a business, how would I communicate about myself?
Yeah.
And that's when I started exploring, first and foremost, and very importantly, what are my core values? And once I had the 5 core values of Jean-François Inc. identified, then I was like, okay, now actually I understand why I get frustrated or irritated at people or situations, because usually it's because one of my 5 core values is being impinged on, butted up
Question?
against,
Yeah, of course.
questioned, challenged. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
And then so once I had that base, I was like, wow, I understand my feelings and my emotions a lot more because I know what I value. And then the question of purpose, which sounds really big,
Hmm.
but really to me seemed a logical step. I realized that I had been doing this throughout my life, is trying to help others. And so my purpose actually, Bart, is to help people self-realize, right? Discover who they are and make that happen practically, do something about it.
Right.
And
Love it.
then the big question in between those two things, the core values and the purpose, it's like, how do I do this? And that's when coaching came into my life.
Yeah. So smart. So smart. Going back to the day that the perfect storm, as you had described, pandemic and the story that you're sharing, new leaders and restructuring and going from this department head to this department head and different layers and new people, you feel like, oh my gosh, I have to reprove myself all over again. And why am I doing what I'm doing? Was there one particular incident, if you don't mind sharing, that pushed you over the edge to the point where I am done?
So this was in mid-July 2020. This was the first relaxing of the lockdown rules in England. And so my wonderful wife booked us a little cottage, heavily sanitized, of course,
Hmm.
in the Cotswolds, right? Like cottage country, basically. And every single morning that week, on that first week off I've had that year, and the first time we actually leave our apartment, I was just waking up in a panic at 5:30 in the morning, just thinking about all the emails I was going to be going back to. And that, I think that was really the straw that broke the camel's back. And I was like, this is ridiculous. How have I ended up here? So that was a tipping point. But I think it was just an accumulation of all of these things.
Yeah, no, and thank you for sharing. And I think many of our listeners can relate to waking up and almost gasping, I have so much to do today, and why am I doing it? All right, so then, okay, just to continue with the journey, Jean-François, you resign 14 years to the day. Congratulations. Then you start working on yourself. Did you have a runway to start a new company? Did you have savings that you're
Mm.
like, look, this is what one, I want to work on myself first for 7 months, as an example, perhaps. I'm looking again at some of your bio.
Mm.
And then I want to start a new company. And it's going to be X number of years before I start getting revenue from that. How did you approach that whole runway? I'm going to run out of money. My wife is in musical theater. Maybe you don't have a trust fund. Like, how did you handle the whole money aspect? I'm giving up a big paying job.
We do have a lot of savings in place, and I liquidated my shares in the business because that was part of the package that I would get as part of the business. But I've got to be completely honest with you, Bart. Like there was no plan. And I think a lot of the discussions I had before I handed in my notice, people were like, can you build on what you have right now and plan your exit and then give yourself some kind of time to find something else? I was too far gone. I need to pull the plug. So I didn't plan the 7 month sabbatical. I don't know if this is going to sound weird, but this is actually the truth is like there was a lot of what I started doing was listening to myself,
Mhm.
getting out of my own way and going, what feels right? What should I be doing right now? Instead of trying, it comes in from here instead of coming in from here and
Yes,
all the external stimuli and the pressure. It's just
yes,
like
yes.
this inspiration. I said earlier, remembering who we are. I think I started removing
The
all
stuff.
those masks or those
Yeah,
layers that I'd been
yeah,
putting on
yeah.
myself for so long and
Yes.
rediscovering who I was. And that actually helped me tune into my instincts, for lack of a better term. And I know it's the right thing, but every time I talk about this, it's one of those things where nobody really teaches us any of that. If it is taught, it's taught in like parables or analogy, or
Hmm.
everybody talks about it differently because everybody's experienced it differently. That's really what happened. And I have to say, once I started getting out of my own way, and I'm not a lazy person, I worked, right? Even
Hmm.
though I didn't have a 9 to 5, I sat down and from 9 to 5, like I did things and I moved things forward. And once I started doing that and listening to myself, again, going to sound weird, but money started appearing.
Yes,
I got money coming in that I didn't expect to come in
yes,
that would
yes.
fund a little bit more time, that
Yeah.
would prevent me from having to go back to something I didn't want to do. Or Tash had a contract that came in for a full year. My grandfather passed away a couple of years ago, and he was old, but it wasn't expected. And there was a life insurance payout for both myself and my sister. So actually, in a way, my grandfather is helping fund this
Hmm.
business venture as well, which is
Hmm.
something he was talking about when he was alive. And he didn't do it while he was alive. Now that he's passed on, he's doing it.
He's
So
helping you. Yeah. Yeah.
it's really
Things, things,
fantastic.
yeah. And I thank you, Jean-François, because things work out. Things always work out. You are still here. You are
Hmm.
breathing. You have a
Hmm.
roof over your head. Things work out. And that's what I've learned from my wife, who's now my full-time business partner with this. Her name is Terry. She will always say things along the lines of, we can always make more money. We can always make money. We can figure out a way. We're smart. We can make money. And when you are in the right headspace, when you're thinking good things, when you're doing good things for good people, there are opportunities that are abundant and they're just going to flow in. But you have to be in the right space, which is exactly what you did by taking that sabbatical. Your health, your mental well-being, and I'm saying this to you and I'm saying it to all of our listeners, is more important than a job. Your relationships, more important than a job. You can make money, right? You could sell things on eBay, TikTok, right? You could be a consultant, you go on Fiverr. You could join Jean-François to learn how to be a coach, right? There's things that you can refer business to. Most people don't, and I'll give you a finder's fee. There are ways of being able to make money, but the most important thing is your health and being. And I'm proud of you for taking that leap. And I'm sure your wife, Tash, correct? I'm
Hmm.
sure she had a lot to do with it. Did she encourage
Yeah.
you?
Yeah, the support I got from her was incredible. And we live in a tiny London flat, so those pandemic days were tough because obviously her being a musical theater actor and a yoga teacher, there was not a lot of work going around for her.
Yeah.
But it's a testament on the way that you just spoke about Terry, right? Like that connection that you have with that person, and thick
Mhm.
and thin, it's really about having each other's back and supporting each other. So yeah, Tash has always had my back. Yeah, and what you said is really true. The most valuable currency that we have really isn't money, it's time, right? That's the one thing that we can't buy back. Every time we talk about these things, because I've spoken about this with other podcast hosts, right? I wish and I hope that this gets baked into the education system, right? I think new
Mhm.
parents are probably more aware of this than my parents were. So passing this on from generation to generation, but also building the fundamental structure for kids to be raised in that environment and really to get them to tap into from a younger age into what matters to them and the notion that what's valuable isn't
Mhm.
necessarily what they might well see on TikTok or on YouTube or whatever.
Yeah, no, you're right. It really does need to become a cultural change. And for you and for our listeners, I did an online class. It was through Coursera called Positive Psychology. Brilliantly done. I can't sadly remember the name of the professor or the school, but the notion was that at a young age in the educational system, that young kids, young children can be taught the aspects of empathy, of sympathy, of gratitude, of graciousness, of kindness, because right now it's not being taught. So there is a very small movement, I believe, and hopefully it's getting larger to be able to help educate the youth of today to be able to have those values and realize that it is not about this instant gratification on the phone. It is about the longevity of relationships and how we're making people feel. Yeah,
Hmm.
well, let's see and let's hope that our listeners also have some great ideas to share with you or me, both of us, okay, to see what
Hmm.
we can do to be able to help. All right, I want our listeners and I would like to learn more about um, Wabya, Wabya. You had shared before we officially hit record that it is an acronym. Can you tell us what the acronym is? And then we
Hmm.
want to learn more about your company that you co-founded.
Hmm. So Wabya is an acronym for We Are Because You Are, which is inspired by Ubuntu, which is a South African-born philosophy that promotes this notion of the indivisibility of the individual in society, right? So we can't
Mhm.
exist without others, and others can't exist without us. My co-founder Craig is South African, and he grew up in the province where this originated from. Uh, and it inspired a lot of his childhood. And when we were looking for a domain name,
Mhm.
obviously every domain name under the sun with the word coach has already been taken. But it worked out as we were riffing, and he was saying, I am because you are. And I was like, but what about we are because you are? And my communication default position is always, can we make an acronym out of that? Because it's easier to remember. And then Wabya came about. And so we
Mhm.
got Wabya.com. But the really big thing and the importantly, it's not so much about having the name, but the intention behind it is like Wabya isn't so much a coaching platform where we match coaches with clients.
Mhm.
It's a self-realization vehicle, in fact, because we believe that the closer an individual gets to self-realizing over the course of their lives, the
Mhm.
more of a positive halo effect it's going to have on people around him or her or them, right? And so for us, coaching is a vehicle to help people self-realize, meaning discover who they are and then realize in the sense of creating that, right? Making that real, doing something about it. And then our vision is really in a few years to grow beyond just, like I said, a coaching aggregator. So think you can think about it practically right now in terms of Uber, but for coaching.
Mhm.
So you have something to explore in your life, whether it's relationships or career or health related, and you're looking for a coach. You hop on a platform, you answer a few questions, and we match you immediately with a coach that is literally trained to coach you on any topic that you'd like. That's the practicality of the platform. But the beauty and where our vision lies is providing a greater outlet for people to use whatever is right for them on their journey to
Mhm.
self-realization.
Mhm.
So it's a big, bold idea. Craig came up with our mission statement, which is to bring self-realization through coaching to 1 billion people by
Mhm.
2033, which is a crazy number, but I believe that we can do it. And you know, why not? What's the sentence? If you aim for the moon, if you miss, you'll hit the stars or something like that, right? We want our reach to exceed our grasp,
Mhm.
basically.
Mhm. And I love the idea. And I'm just curious, as you described your journey and you were talking about purpose and your values and what lies in between and how can you use your values and your basis, your foundation to drive your purpose. Is that the same type of framework that your coaches provide?
Mm. Yes, in so many words, yes. The answer is yes. I think what's really important to understand about coaching, especially certified coaching. That's very important, right? All of our coaches are certified by the International Coaching Federation,
Hmm.
which is the standard that they have to adhere to. But the way that ICF certified coaches are trained is to not coach the topic the person is bringing to the table, but coach the person.
Hmm.
Because ultimately, if you have a problem with your job or a problem with your spouse, I was taught something once that when you point the finger at someone, there's always three fingers pointing right back at you. And
Yeah.
so the way that the coaches operate is going, that's okay, that's great. I hear you're having some issues with X, Y, or Z, but what does that mean to you? And why is that important to you? Why does that
Hmm.
frustrate you? Or
Hmm.
what do you love about this situation? So it's really about turning inwards and exploring those fundamental sets of values and beliefs and getting people to interrogate what they value or
Yeah.
believe. And I'll tell you right now, Bart,
Hmm.
I'd say 95% of my clients, if I ask them in the first session or two what their core values are, they can't name them.
Mm.
And it's not a slight. It's just that people
No.
just don't think about that.
Yeah. And there are certainly tools that are out there in leadership and behavioral analysis tools. Because
Hmm.
even if you ask me, I've done something like that recently, and it's about relationship, love, caring, and knowledge. And it resonates with me because it is me.
Hmm.
But not a lot of people, and I use this statement, it's easy to be, but it's better to become. There are
Hmm.
some people that are very satisfied with just being, and not being as in pleasant and content with yourself, but it's being of not necessarily wanting to improve. But these are the people that want to improve, that want to learn, that are reaching out to you, which I think is so extremely helpful. There's a website, and I don't want to give anything away that would ever compete with you. There's a website, and I can send it to you later. That I was just curious because I don't officially do coaching. I do more informal coaching. Most of my
Hmm.
business is, right, keynote speaking on stages in front of thousands of people. But I was looking into it one time, and there was a website that would direct people and say, these are all the people that are looking for help, and they're within a 100-mile radius of you. And I have to tell you, and I'm sure you've seen this, Jean-François, it's sad how many people need help. And it was just a little subject line: going through a divorce, lost a job, caregiver to my father, kids don't talk to me. Like, there were so many different components and such sadness. I wanted to reach out to every single one, not feasible.
Hmm.
I'm so glad that you and Craig and your other team members are doing this, because it is so critically important to be able to help people. Do you
Hmm.
have any success stories at this point that you can share without names about
Hmm.
someone that came to you with a situation, and after 5 or 6 sessions or 12 sessions or a year of coaching, they've been able to do this or feel a certain way?
Hmm. I don't have one story that really stands out because, and this is just the plain truth, Bart, is that there is not one client I've worked with that I'm aware that any Wabya coach has worked with that hasn't walked away from the experience just feeling a sense of growth. And I think the reason I can't qualify the experiences is because I would be judging them on my scale or
Of
my
course,
metrics,
of course.
right? And for them, for me, what would be like tiny growth, for them could be gigantic growth. And I think that's really the main and important thing is that no one has walked away from a coaching conversation or a set of coaching conversations going, this has been a waste of time. Like no one, no one. I think the ICF number is 99.5% or something of people who undertake coaching are either satisfied or very satisfied with the experience. And I can guarantee that those numbers are reflected in the clients that we've seen come through Wabya, through my private coaching practice. And I love, by the way, I'd love for you to share the website. And actually, you can mention it absolutely
Yes.
because we don't believe that there's a
Oh,
finite amount of people. Like people should help each other. We want everyone to find help. So what is the website
yeah.
that you were mentioning?
I believe it, and I'm going to see if I can look it up while I'm talking to you for our listeners. I think it's something like Bark, Bark
Yeah,
.com. And let me just see if that is the right one. Maybe it's not Bark. It's something related to Bark.
yeah.
I just put a Bark.com, find the perfect professional for you. So I think that's about personal trainers and house cleaning. So that's not it. But it's
Mm.
something along those lines
Yeah.
for, let me see, Bark for coaching. I don't know if that's it. But I
We
was
could
just,
we
oh,
could all
oh,
use. Oh, you
yeah,
got it?
sorry. No.
I was just going to say one of our ethos
Yeah.
for Craig and I and for Wabya is there is enough. There are 7 billion people on Earth, and a lot of them need help.
Yeah.
Like, actually, most of us could use a little bit of help. And so, on that basis, we don't talk about competition. We talk about the
Mm.
industry. So, for us, we talk about the coaching industry, but really, it's about like the helping out industry. And I know this doesn't really make sense, maybe from an investor standpoint, when you're looking at investing in a business and whatnot, but we really believe that 1 + 1 = 3. So, if we pool of all our efforts together, and we can all work together to help others. I have this idea maybe of Wabya becoming part of a cooperative of like-minded businesses that can profit pool together to help individuals that are in need of help. We have a Threads account. Threads is like the X, but for Instagram, basically.
Hmm.
And it's a really cool little community, and I engage with it on a daily basis. And it's incredible the amount of people that just thank us for how we engage with them, for spending time just going, encouraging them. We get thanked for our energy, for positivity, for supporting them. I have people who have told me, like, I was in a really bad place and you just responded in that way, and that really made a difference. So outside of even of paying for a service, everyone can just be a little bit nicer and a little bit more supportive. And you don't know whose life you're impacting on a daily
Yes.
basis.
Uh, I am with you 1,000%. In fact, my wife and I now travel with gratitude stones in our pockets. And when we catch someone that is doing something unique or special or that needs a gratitude stone from us, yeah, and you're getting emotional of it. I love it. We give it to them and we tell them what it means to us and why we're giving it. And
Mm-hmm.
the reaction has been life-changing. You will see people cry because they've been struggling with sobriety and this was their 12th day in a row. We've given it to homeless folks that are holding up signs that said, I might as well be invisible. And we give them a gratitude stone and a fist bump. And I believe it will help change them because there's hope and there's giving and there's gratitude. And I'm looking people in the eye. So it's those little things. So I love, again, what you are doing, what Wabya is doing. Last question for you, and I will give out all the details. I know that you are a UK-based company. Are you
Mm-hmm.
able to help individuals around the world, the United States? Does it matter? How does that work?
Mm-hmm. The great thing with technology now is that we're international. The other great thing is that we're very much still in startup mode. So we're finding our footing and discovering, I guess the proper business term would be product market fit. But if you're in need of some support and you think you could use some coaching, no matter where you are in the world, no matter who you are, we will find a way to help you. You can definitely reach out to us, and I'm assuming we can share some kind of contact
Yes.
information and
Yes.
whatnot.
Yeah. Yes. No, of course. Of course. Yeah. No, good to know that it's worldwide. Startup
Yeah, of
mode still, you're
course.
still growing, but
Mhm.
you are creating a platform for individuals that need to help identify their purpose
Mhm.
and find fulfillment in their lives because you've
Mhm.
gone through it. You're helping thousands of people, and that's the community that you're building. Amazing to be able to chat with you. I will give out the website initially and then any other contact details, Jean-François, that you would like to share. But Wabya is WABYA.com. Terrific website, talks about the process, about coaching, about the team. Jean-François, last name is spelled Lapas, Lapas, if I'm saying it okay.
You
Yes,
are.
and he's on LinkedIn. Can you share other contact details, Jean-François? Is the website the best one? Are there any other hashtags, Instagram, Facebook, anything else that you would recommend?
Yeah, so we are on Instagram at we are because you are. And yeah, going on the website, drop us a line via the contact page or email us directly. The email address is youare@wabya.com.
You, spell it out, Y-O-U-A-R-E.
Youare at wabya.com.
Okay, awesome. And we are because you are just reminds me of part of my mission. Most people don't, right? It's easy to remember. We are because you are. I'm already seeing t-shirts. We can help you with t-shirts, whatever you need, hats, we can help you, right? But it's a message. It's a message that is easy to remember and it's so very powerful. So I'm loving the concept, of course. Last question, Jean-François, and if time is permitting, I usually like to ask this question. Can you complete this sentence? Most people don't blank.
Most people don't know how wonderful and unique they are.
Yeah, outstanding. And that's what Jean-François is doing. That's what Wabya.com is doing, and the entire team is doing. Thank you so much. What a pleasure to be able to meet you. I suggest people go to your website, connect with you on LinkedIn, reach out. Everyone has something, and why not reach out to new friends that you learned about through this podcast? So thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Bart, thank you very much for having me, and obviously everyone who's tuning in, lots of love, and I can't wait to hear from you.